Star Wars is filled with heroes and villains, but not every story has a happy ending. Some characters are doomed by fate, manipulated by dark forces, or simply make the wrong choices at the worst possible moment. Whether they fall to darkness, lost everything they cared about, or suffered a fate worse than death. Today we're going over the 10 most tragic characters in all of Star Wars. Number 10, Shmei Skywalker. Anakin's mother had been a slave ever since she was a young girl, and she was bought and sold by traders around the galaxy, finally ending up on Tatooine in the possession of the Hutts and eventually the junkyard dealer Watto. One of the hardest things she ever had to do was let her son, Anakin, leave her. He was only 9 years old at the time, but she knew that her boy was destined for more than life as a slave. Despite her hard life, Shmei eventually found love, happiness, and freedom with a moisture farmer named Klieg Lars. However, her world was turned on its head when she was captured and brutalized by a clan of Tusken Raiders. She was held in captivity for many long days, and was ultimately saved by Anakin, who had returned to find her, having sensed the danger his mother was in. While she was proud to see the Jedi that her son had become, Shmei ultimately succumbed to her injuries and died in his arms. While this was a tragic story for Shmei, it was also a catalyst that set Anakin off down his own bleak path. Number 9, Qui Gon Jinn. A maverick within the Jedi Order, Qui Gon Jinn had been the one to discover a young Anakin Skywalker on Tatooine. He knew that there was something special about the boy, and struggled to free the young slave and take him to the Jedi to begin training. Unfortunately, he was only met with resistance, mainly from his fellow Jedi. Obi-Wan openly disapproved and questioned his master's choices, something which exemplified their rocky master-apprentice relationship over the years. Similarly, the Jedi Council refused to train the boy and disapproved of Qui-Gon's methods and tactics, seeing him as a loose cannon and a maverick. Against their wishes, Qui-Gon said he would unofficially take Anakin as his Padawan. Yet, the Jedi Master was soon killed without even beginning Anakin's training. He had to watch on from the spirit world of the Force, being unable to intervene or help Obi-Wan and the Jedi as they struggled to train the dangerously flourishing young man. May the 4th be with you. Our friends at Saber Council are running their biggest sale of the year to celebrate Star Wars Day. You can choose between one of 2 offers. Code FREESABER will get you a free mystery lightsaber with any lightsaber purchase. The better you buy, the better the mystery one will be. Or, if you'd prefer just a straight discount, code MAY4 will get you 20% off site-wide. Saber Council already offers the most competitive prices on the market, and if you're in the United States, you won't have to pay any extra tariffs. Do not hesitate, this is their biggest sale of the year, and it runs through tomorrow, Revenge of the 5th. Head on over to the link in the description and take your seat on the Saber Council. Number 8, General Grievous. Once a proud and celebrated Kaleesh warrior, General Grievous became a shadow of his former self after being involved in an orchestrated crash landing. Choosing to become a cyborg rather than die, he eventually became far more droid than Kaleesh. In fact, there were minimal organic parts, with only the essential components of his former body being left. Eventually becoming indebted to Sith Lord Count Dooku, Grievous also lost the privilege of being a 100% biological being. So when he found himself being placed in charge of the Separatist droid army, he was looked upon as nothing more than a glorified battle droid, something which wounded the once proud warrior so much that his mind started to fracture, turning him into an unpredictable and even more dangerous killing machine, a tool by which the Sith could wage their war. Grievous's misplaced pride in his former skills eventually ended up getting him killed, with no one missing or mourning him after he had died, a humiliating end for one who quite literally fought and bled for his own glory. Number 7, Maul. One character who was never able to catch a break was Darth Maul. Taken by Darth Sidious as a boy and trained to be his apprentice, Maul was shaped to become a dangerous weapon. He was the first Sith revealed to the Jedi after generations of peace, and while they didn't believe the Sith had returned, Maul's slaying of Qui Gon left them in no doubt. He was cut in half and left for dead by Obi-Wan, but his hate for Kenobi kept him alive. Years later, Maul was found alive, but both physically and mentally broken. The Night Sisters restored his former mind, and he began his crusade for revenge against the Jedi alongside his brother, Savage Opress. After Savage was murdered and he lost everything once again, Maul turned to the criminal underworld for power, struggling to the top of Crimson Dawn and the Shadow Collective. His sights still set on revenge, and again, Maul lost it all. However, when he finally got to confront Obi-Wan Kenobi one last time, Maul thought his time to shine had come, but he was quickly killed. While he had stagnated and held on to his anger for decades, Kenobi had grown, matured, and become far superior to Maul. The former Sith Lord died, finally understanding the unfairness of the situation and how he had been used from the very start. Number 6. Luke Skywalker. While Luke's story might seem like one of both heroism and hope, the truth is that Skywalker's tale is a tragic one. Yes, he helped redeem Darth Vader and defeat Darth Sidious, bringing balance to the Force, and yes, he was on the winning side of the Galactic Civil War, but it was in the wake of all of this that things took a tragic turn. After the loss of his new Jedi Academy at the hands of his nephew, Luke rejected the Jedi ways and went into hiding on the hidden homeworld of the Jedi Order, Ahch-To. He spent many years shut away there, refusing to help despite the rise of a new galactic threat with the First Order. Even when Jedi hopeful Rey found him, Luke was resistant to helping her, pushing away his past and his responsibilities to train future Jedi. It was through his connection to his sister Leia and Rey's insistence that she would not abandon Skywalker that he reconnected with the Force. Luke, with a renewed sense of purpose and inner peace, force projected himself to Crate in order to confront Kylo Ren and give the Resistance enough time to escape. While that spark of rebellion was once again rekindled, Luke had used up the last of his energy and died alone on the planet where he had isolated himself for so long. Number 5. Ben Solo. The boy who one day became Kylo Ren is another example of a character whose story is one of tragedy, albeit in a slightly different way. He was born into a loving family, and he had a supportive upbringing, eventually going on to train with Luke at his new Jedi Academy. However, his mind was slowly being turned and corrupted over time, and when he wrongly assumed that his uncle Luke was trying to kill him, he snapped, destroying the academy, killing many of the students, and fleeing into the arms of Snoke, who was spearheading the new First Order. Ben, or Kylo Ren as he then went by, was the unhinged right-hand man of Snoke, constantly being torn apart by both the dark and the light within him. Killing his father, Han Solo, only added to his conflicted mind. It was only when he met Rey, his equal in the Force, that Ben killed Snoke, let go of his years of pain and heartache, and eventually embraced the light, giving up his life in order to save Rey's. Number 4. Padme Amidala. There are few more good and well-intentioned characters than Padme Amidala. Having been queen and then senator for her home planet of Naboo, she fought for what was right, and stood up for all galactic citizens, not just her own. But she fell in love with Anakin, and this simple act put her life in danger and set her down a path with only one tragic ending. Padme tried to support and understand Anakin for who he was, despite understanding that he was not the most conventional of Jedi. She forgave his slaughter of the Tusken Raiders after his mother was killed, and she looked past the many times he displayed far less desirable and darker tendencies. For such a logical and level-headed person, Padme unwisely let her heart rule over her head. Padme watched the Senate become an empire, friends become enemies, and the galaxy she worked so hard for pull itself apart with thunderous applause. When she eventually confronted Anakin, the love of her life, about his alleged turn to the dark side, he choked her and left her unconscious. Soon after childbirth, Padme died hoping against all odds that there was still good in Anakin. And heartbroken that her children had been born into a dangerous, unstable, and unpredictable galaxy. Number 3. Count Dooku. The future Sith Lord had always been a maverick Jedi. It's where Qui Gon had learned it, but this often put Dooku at odds with the Jedi Council. His tactics were often more ruthless and violent. Well, he had a dream and a vision. He saw what the Republic was becoming, and he saw how the Jedi were taking a more active and often violent role in its fall, and he didn't want any part of it. Aligning himself with Darth Sidious, he hoped that he would be able to make real change. However, it soon became clear that Sidious was a large part of the problem. But by that time, Dooku was too deeply entrenched in the dark side to simply walk away. He led the Separatist alliance in hopes of bettering the galaxy, and while he was privy to his master's grand plan, he was still just a pawn in it. Dooku committed evil acts in his own right, but his long-term intentions were for the betterment of the galaxy. However, despite thinking that he would be able to make a real change, Dooku was betrayed by Sidious and thrown under the bus in order to turn Anakin to the dark side. Number 2. ObiWan Kenobi. While he might not immediately seem like a tragic character, Obi-Wan suffered immensely throughout his life. Despite being a model Jedi, he was thrust into the role of Anakin Skywalker's master after Qui-Gon was killed. Despite not being ready, Obi-Wan did his best to mold Skywalker into the perfect Jedi, one who would bring balance to the Force. But Anakin constantly pushed back against his teachings, something which contributed to his downfall. The monster who he watched kill his master, Darth Maul, later came back from the dead and killed the only woman he ever loved, Duchess Satine Kryze, who Kenobi admitted he would have left the Jedi Order to be with. As the Jedi Order fell, Kenobi and his apprentice battled on the lava world of Mustafar, and a devastated Obi-Wan had to cut Anakin down and leave him for dead, despite seeing him as a brother. In the aftermath of the rise of the Empire, Kenobi went into hiding on Tatooine, watching over young Luke Skywalker from a distance. While isolated on the desert planet, Kenobi constantly replayed his life and his failings, beating himself up over the outcome, and blaming himself more and more, especially after discovering what Anakin had turned into. Obi-Wan finally took up the mantle as Luke's teacher when the young man was ready. However, he sacrificed himself on board the Death Star to allow Luke to escape. He was killed at the hands of Darth Vader, his ultimate failure in order to see the potential savior of the galaxy survive. Before we get to the number 1 most tragic character though, we just want to give an honorable mention to the clone troopers. All of them. They were bred for war, they fought to the death, and the Republic couldn't have asked for more loyal and skilled soldiers. But they were ultimately as expendable as the droid army, and the mere tools which with Darth Sidious would wipe out the Jedi. After the Empire was formed, anti-clone sentiments went through the roof, and they were phased out of the army. With no real purpose in their life anymore, they were left to unceremoniously age and die. Number 1. Anakin Skywalker. The most tragic character in all of Star Wars is undoubtedly Anakin Skywalker. He suffered so much throughout his life, being born into a life of slavery before being accepted into the Jedi Order, something which he loved while at the same time feeling like a square peg in a round hole. Of course, the most tragic element of his story was his descent and transformation into Darth Vader. He betrayed his friends and the Jedi Order in an attempt to save Padme from death, which he still ultimately failed at, just as he had failed to save the life of his mother. With nothing and no one left, Anakin, now Vader, threw himself into the dark side and helped to rule the galaxy as a mysterious and brutal enforcer of the Empire. The number of horrific deeds that he committed under the orders of his Sith Lord Master were uncountable, and death and destruction followed Vader wherever he went. It was his son Luke who managed to coax out that light that had been buried so deep within Vader. But by then, it was far too late. Anakin died redeemed, but regretted the tragic life of unspeakable darkness that he had lived.